If you're using Final Cut Pro but you're not using Apple Motion, I think that you're definitely missing out. Apple Motion is an amazing software that helps you to create a lot of different effects that you can then transfer over to Final Cut Pro. You can actually create titles and generators and effects. There's a whole bunch of different things you can do with Apple Motion that will make your Final Cut Pro experience significantly better. So in this video, I'm going to teach you how to create an adjustment layer using Apple Motion that we're then going to bring into Final Cut Pro. So I hope that you're excited to get started. Let's dive in. Now, the first thing that you're going to want to do is go get Apple Motion if you don't already have it. Now, it is a $50 purchase to get Apple Motion, but it's a lifetime purchase, and you will have Apple Motion then indefinitely and be able to use it in all of the different versions that come out in the future. So for me, if you're really serious about video editing and you want to get into Final Cut Pro and you want to get really good at this and be able to create all the different effects that you want, then that $50 purchase for Apple Motion is a worthwhile investment so that you can actually create all of the different effects that you want. So what you're going to do is you're going to go into the App Store, you're going to open that up, and then you're just going to search for Motion. And most likely the first thing that'll pop up here on the screen is Apple Motion, and you can see that mine says open because I've already purchased it, but then you're just going to click on the purchase button, pay the $50, and then you will have one of the most powerful tools that you can use in conjunction with Final Cut Pro. Now, after you've purchased Apple Motion, you're going to want to open that up, and as Apple Motion opens up, the first thing that you're going to see is this splash screen, and then you will see the project browser. Now, the project browser is just a way for us to pick which type of project we're going to build and set some basic settings. Now, there's a bunch of different things you can create with Apple Motion. You can create a motion project that's basically just a project to be able to apply different effects to your videos. You can also create Final Cut effects. You can create Final Cut generators, Final Cut transitions, and you can create Final Cut titles. Now, anything here that says Final Cut, you're going to be able to save it later on as a motion template, and that will then be able to be imported into Final Cut Pro and used in Final Cut Pro. So for our purposes, we're going to create an adjustment layer, and an adjustment layer in Final Cut Pro would probably work best as a title, because if you think about how a title works in Final Cut Pro, you're basically dropping that on top of everything else, and so it's basically sitting as a layer on top of everything. And an adjustment layer in Final Cut Pro and in most other situations is a layer that allows you to apply effects or coloring or all sorts of different things to all of the clips that are underneath it. So you only have to apply these different color grades or effects or whatever on top of this one layer, and it gets applied to everything. So we're going to choose Final Cut title here, and then we're going to go over here and set up some settings. Now up here you can set the resolution for your project. I'm going to set mine to 1080p, and then I'm just going to keep it at 29.97 frames per second. You can set these to whatever is relevant to your projects that you're working on. And then I'm going to make sure the duration is just 10 seconds, and then I'm going to click open. When you open up a title project, you're going to have a title background here, and you're going to have title text. Now, we're not actually going to want any of this, and so I want to show you how to do this from scratch. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select all of that, and I'm going to delete it, okay? Because we're going to create this entire project from scratch. Now, the first thing we're going to want to do is create a group. So we're going to right-click over here in our project layers, and we're going to click New Group. And we can rename this by just clicking on that space right there. And we're going to call this adjustment layer, like that. And that group is going to basically be a container that's going to hold our entire adjustment layer. Now, the next thing that we want to put in here is a title background, okay? So we can actually go up here to Add, and then we're going to add in a drop zone. Now, the reason we're adding a drop zone is because a title background and a drop zone are all coming from the same object, okay? We're just going to change some settings to make it a title background. And basically, this is going to allow us to like drop effects and things onto this actual layer. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to click on our drop zone. We're going to go over to the inspector here in Motion, and the inspector is going to be where you find all of your different properties and stuff for the different objects that you're putting in here. And under the drop zone type, we're going to change that to title background. And so now this is a title background, which means it's going to basically take on the properties of whatever gets put on top of it. Now, in reality, if you're just trying to create a basic adjustment layer, we're done. That's it. All you had to do was create an actual group and put a title background in here, because the title background is going to allow you to then be able to drop things on top of it, like different effects in Final Cut Pro and coloring and color adjustments and things like that. You would be able to apply it to this title. So really quickly, let me show you that this alone, this very basic one object that we put in here, would allow you to create an adjustment layer. So we're going to go up to File, and we're going to Save As, and we're going to create a new template here. And now we're going to create a category here, so I will actually create a new category, and I'll explain why in a second, but I'm going to create a new category here, and we're just going to call this Learn Motion, so that you can actually see it in Final Cut Pro. So we're going to click Create for the category, and now we have it in the category Learn Motion. We're going to call our template Adjustment Layer. Like that. We're not going to set any theme or check any of these boxes. We're just going to click Publish. Now what's happened here is we've created a motion template. Now if you go to your Finder and you search for your user folder like this, and you click on the Movies folder, then inside of the Movies folder, there's going to be a folder called Motion Templates. Now the Motion Templates is where all of your effects and generators and titles are stored. And so when you created this title, it's inside of the Titles folder now. And if we go in here, there should be a folder called Learn Motion. That folder is the category that you created. And so now if you go into the Learn Motion folder, there's also an adjustment layer. And if you go into here, this is your actual template. This is the title plugin that you've just created. I'm referring to it as a plugin because a lot of times you could just use these as plugins, but what they really are is motion templates. Now that you know where it's actually storing it, we can actually open that up in Final Cut Pro now. We didn't have to actually do anything else to open this in Final Cut Pro, because when you save the motion template, it's putting it all in the right spot for Final Cut Pro to already know where it is. So we're going to open up Final Cut Pro, and then we're going to actually see this layer in action. So now that we have Final Cut Pro open here, I'm just going to load up a video clip here. So I will load up these lions in this video clip, and I'm going to create a new project. We'll just call this Timeline, just so we kind of know what that is. And now we have a video clip that we're going to drag down here onto the timeline. Now we want to apply this adjustment layer that we just created. So if we go over here to our titles, and then we click on this little drop down over here, you can find that folder that's called Learn Motion that we just created. And now you can see that there's an adjustment layer here. And this adjustment layer title, we can drag that on top of our video, and then we can apply whatever effects we want to. So I'm just going to drag that out so it's the duration of the video. And let's say, for example, that I wanted to just go in here and I wanted to colorize. I could drop that onto my actual video clip, and you can see now that that colorization is being applied to the video, but it's being applied on this adjustment layer. And so if I had all sorts of different clips in here, I could just put this adjustment layer over top of it, drag it across all of the different clips, and that colorization would be applied to all of my clips underneath. And so that is the beauty of an adjustment layer like this. Now, this adjustment layer is just an adjustment layer in its simplest form that we created with motion. But now we can actually kind of go a little bit deeper with this. We can add some different properties to our adjustment layer. So we're going to actually leave Final Cut Pro for a little bit. We're going to go back to motion and make some changes. And as soon as we save those changes, it will be applied here in Final Cut Pro and will be available to us right away. So back here in motion, we want to now add some different properties to this to be able to just kind of adjust some different things in the actual title properties. We want to have a little bit more control over our adjustment layer without having to apply a bunch of effects to it. So one of the things we might want to be able to adjust on our adjustment layer is like the brightness of the image. So to do that, we're just going to click on our title background here, and we're going to go up to our filters here, and we're going to add a color filter, and we're going to click on the brightness filter. And so basically what this is going to do, it's going to give us some sliders here. It'll allow us to raise and lower the brightness of the image. And we'll set that back to 1 just because it's the standard brightness. Now, the way we actually make these properties available to us in the properties on the title is we go over here to the arrow on the right here, and we click on this, okay? Now I want to add this checkbox here that's basically enabling and disabling the brightness. So if I go over to this little drop down arrow here and I click on Publish, Now when I've clicked on that and I've published it, it will actually be available to us in the Final Cut Pro plugin. I'm going to do the same thing here for brightness. Click on that and go to publish. And for mix, click on that and go to publish. And now I'm going to go up to File and I'm going to save this. And if I jump back here to Final Cut Pro, all I have to do is delete the title that I put in there, drag it back on again, and now you can see over here, if I click on the title inspector here, you can see now I have these published parameters and I can control the brightness and I can control the mix of that brightness here, okay? And so now I have these extra controls on top of this adjustment layer to be able to control how bright and how dark the image is. So that's pretty cool. So let's add a couple of more different parameters that we want here. I would really like to have the ability to kind of add a letterbox to this, right? To be able to add that kind of black on the top and the bottom. Now, the way that we can do that is if we make sure we've clicked on our title background, we go up here to filters and we go to border, we can go down to the widescreen filter here. And if we click on that, that's going to give us basically the ability to adjust how this looks in a kind of a widescreen structure. So we have an aspect ratio here, and if we were to adjust this to different ones, you can see that it adds that black to the top and the bottom. We can kind of go up and down, change the aspect ratio, right? And that will adjust how those black borders look. And so what we're going to do is we're going to just set this to be the default here, and we're going to publish these parameters like we did before. Now, like we did before, we want this checkbox to be able to enable and disable it. So we'll just right click on that, go to publish. Going to do the same thing for each one of these parameters now. So I'm just going to right click on them, go to publish, just click publish, and then again click and publish, and then we'll go up to file and we will save this motion template, and then we're going to go back to Final Cut Pro here. And again, anytime you create new parameters, you have to delete it because it's going to have the old parameters if it's already applied. So we just delete it, grab it again, drop it on top. And then if we kind of pull this out and make it the whole width, now we have over here in our published parameters, we have our brightness, but now we also have this widescreen option. And then we can adjust to something like that, very wide. And now we can just really quickly apply this letterboxing to our actual video without having to go through and apply it to each one of the clips. We can just apply it to this adjustment layer, one little checkbox and a couple of changes, and we're done. It's such a beautiful thing. Now, another popular effect that you might want on an adjustment layer would be like to be able to colorize it really quickly, right? So let's just jump back to motion over here, and we're going to click on our title background again, go up here to filters, go down to color, and then we'll look for colorize, and we will add that filter to our actual template here. And then again, we'll go over here to our properties. We're going to click on publish. We're going to click on publish, 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 and of course, publish. So now we've published all of the different properties for the colorize effect, and we're going to go up here to file and we're going to save, and then we'll jump back here to Final Cut Pro, and something interesting is going to have happened. You're going to see that the actual icon for our adjustment layer has changed, and now it looks kind of like sepia tone. Basically, it's colorized. The reason that is because by default, we have set it so that each one of these different parameters are automatically enabled. And so you're going to be able to basically see the preview of what you're going to see here in this adjustment layer. Now we have to delete the old one like we did before, drag this one on top, and then pull it over. And now you can see that the colorize effect is working. Now, for me, I would probably not want all of these different properties enabled by default. I'd keep them so that they're not enabled by default. So to do that, we'll go back over here to motion, and then you're going to click on this project here, right? Up here at the top, you're going to click on the project, and this is going to show you all of your published parameters. And then in here, you can set the defaults. You can uncheck the box there, you can uncheck the widescreen, and you can uncheck the colorize. And then if you save this, we'll go to File and Save, go back over here to Final Cut Pro, and then if we delete the adjustment layer like that, click on it, drag it over, drop it on, now you can see by default, none of these checkboxes are checked, and so now it leaves it up to the user to decide whether they want to actually check those or not. I'm going to add a few more effects to this. I'm going to say I want to dive into looks and set mono as an effect that's available, which would basically allow me to set it to black and white or to not. And I think I'm going to also add maybe the ability to sharpen the image. And then I'm also going to add the ability to add a Gaussian blur to it. Now that we have these 3 different filters added, we're going to want to publish their properties as well. Now it matters the order in which you publish these. The order that you publish them is the order they're going to show up in the published properties. So you want to make sure that you click them and publish them in the order that you expect them to be there. Now you can change that later, but you might kind of get yourself confused if you're kind of clicking and publishing a whole bunch of things and you don't remember what the actual order is supposed to be. So for me, I'm just going to publish the mono first here. So I want to make sure that I get the checkbox, and then I want to make sure that I publish the mix. And then I think I'm going to do the sharpen, so I'm going to publish that. I'm going to publish the properties that go with it like this. And then finally, I'm going to publish the Gaussian blur. I'm going to make sure I get that checkbox. And then I'm going to publish these properties in the order that they appear here, like this. And now I should have all of those properties actually added. And then if I click on project up here, now I should see all of my different properties here as they're going to be published. Now, like I said, you could have at one point taken these and moved them around how you wanted to, but it's just easier to publish them in the order that you're expecting so that you don't have to go back and figure this all out later. Now, these are all of the properties that I want, and I want to make sure that they're all unchecked like that, so that's good. And unchecking them here will automatically uncheck them over here in the properties. So if you just uncheck them all here, that will do the same thing. Kind of makes it easier for you to just disable them all by default. And then all we have to do again is go up and make sure we save our motion template, jump back over here to Final Cut Pro, and then of course delete the old adjustment layer. We're going to put the new adjustment layer on top of our lions here, put the playhead over here, and now you can see in our published parameters we have the brightness, which we can adjust, turn it on, adjust our adjustment layer. We have the mix for that. We can also adjust widescreen. We can make it so that this is a widescreen video if we want. We can turn on Colorize, and we could adjust which kind of colors. So let's say we wanted this to be really cool like that. We could change it, or we can kind of disable that. We could turn on mono instead, and now it's just going to be black and white. And the mix here would allow us to kind of mix between color and black and white, so it's kind of like a good saturation. Which brings me to another thought. We can actually change the name of some of these properties, which we'll do in a second. I'll show you that in a second. But now we have our mono ability here. We also have the ability to sharpen it. We can kind of like make it super sharp, a lot less sharp, that kind of thing, right? We can also adjust the Gaussian blur here, adjust the amount like that. So you can go crazy with all of the different filters and features that you can add to your adjustment layer if you want by default. Now, if we jump back over here to motion really quick, I just want to show you that here in our published parameters, we can change these names if we want. So if I don't like this being called widescreen, for example, I can change that to letterbox, which, you know, old school movie letterbox, the black on the top and the bottom. That name just makes more sense to me. It would probably make sense to a lot of filmmakers out there too. So if you call that letterbox, then you can actually just give it a name and make those changes, and then it kind of makes more sense to the user. For example, the mono name down here, I'm not crazy about that. So if I wanted to click on that and rename that to saturation, but actually now that I'm thinking about it, when the value is up to 100%, it's actually black and white. So we can actually call this desaturation. And now that makes sense to me. And just remember, if you don't want these things enabled, you can uncheck these boxes here, and all of these different filters now are completely disabled, and the user has the option to enable them if they want to. So just as a final wrap up here, I'm going to file, save this, and then we're going to go back over here to Final Cut Pro one more time just to see our final result. We now have an adjustment layer that you can drop on top of any number of clips. You can extend it across however long you want to cover all of the clips in the video, or whatever clips you want in the video. You can apply whatever effects you want to it. So if I wanted to come in here and let's take this nostalgia security, and I wanted to drop that on my adjustment layer, it would now add that effect to the adjustment layer over top of the lions. But you can also now change some of these default properties that we've added so that you kind of have quick and easy access to these different effects without having to physically apply the effects to the layer. We could adjust the brightness like this. We have all of these different possibilities. I'm not going to go through them again, I just went through them, but you get the idea. There is a lot of different things that you could do with an adjustment layer, and there's a lot of different effects and filters and behaviors and all sorts of different things in Apple Motion that you could use to add all of this stuff to Final Cut Pro. Apple Motion is an amazing software. It's essentially like Apple's response to Adobe After Effects, right? It is a motion effects software. This is not even scratching the surface of what you can do with Apple Motion. And if you're interested in learning more about motion, I will of course create more videos, but I'm really new to motion and I'm just kind of learning it also. But there's also a dude out there named Dylan Bates, the Final Cut Pro. You're probably familiar with him. If you're on my channel, I'm sure you have come across his. He's an awesome dude. He does a great job teaching about different Final Cut Pro and motion effects and things like that. So you should definitely check out his channel as well. I've got a link to that down in the channels down below on this channel. Also, I have some links to some of his amazing plugins that he's created down in the description of this video and descriptions of all of the other videos. They are affiliate links, so I do get a little bit of a cutback if you buy them from my links. You could just go to his website too if you want. Either way is fine with me. It does help out the channel if you buy them from my affiliate links, but either way, you should definitely go check out his channel, check out his website, his plugins. There's a lot of really cool stuff over there. And if you didn't see the post that I did the other day, I have enabled memberships on this channel, so if you want to become a member of the channel, help support the channel, there's some cool little perks that come along with it. I'm going to create a video to explain the different memberships in a while, and also I'm going to start creating a few different like members only videos, so if you want to kind of be able to see those videos and check them out, definitely become a member. It's just to support the channel, it helps me grow, it's helping me provide these different videos for you, so if you want to become a member, that's really awesome. Otherwise, just keep watching the channel, checking out the videos. I really appreciate being here, and if you thought this video was cool, you should definitely check out this one.